This video is going to break down the three most common elbow injuries that I see amongst the baseball players that I work with. And elbow injuries are happening at an exponentially higher rate than they have in the past. But most people want to take the cop-out answer of blaming velo chasing or overuse injuries, but that's just not the case. Because guys like Nolan Ryan were throwing 100 before it was commonplace, and Bob Gibson had 5 seasons in a row where he had over 20 complete games in those seasons. Why did they never need Tommy John? Were they just lucky? Or were they able to do something that other people aren't able to? No, they weren't lucky. They were able to send that force up the kinetic chain in an efficient way to where their elbow didn't get put in a compromised position and had too much stress placed on it, which is what leads to the elbow injury in the first place. The key to sequencing your movements correctly and efficiently is your posture. And this video is going to break down why your posture is the most important thing that you can be working on right now if you're trying to avoid or rehab an elbow injury. The three most common elbow injuries that I see are going to be ulnar nerve pain, typically with symptoms going down into the hand, or people coming off of ulnar nerve transpositions, people coming off of Tommy John, and then people dealing with pronator strains. I personally have experience dealing with two of these injuries. I had 3 elbow surgeries in high school. All 3 involved my ulnar nerve, and Tommy John was performed in the second one as well. As I was going through all of these rehabs, the only thing that I wanted was for somebody to be able to explain to me why I was getting hurt over and over in the same spot. And they took the same cop-out answers of, oh, your mechanics are bad or you're getting overused. But I wanted a legitimate reason for why the same thing kept happening. And no one could give me that, unfortunately, until it was far too late. But I'm going to share with you exactly what I wish somebody would have told me when I was in high school dealing with this. Your elbow and your shoulder aren't weak, and as much as you may think or much as you may have been told, you aren't broken. You're misaligned. And that's all it is an alignment issue. By getting your body into a better position to move more efficiently, you will compensate less, which means you're going to put less stress on your arm, leading to the pain going away. It is as simple as 1 plus 1 equals 2. Everyone wants to overcomplicate this and throw out terms that you don't understand or go right over your head to make them look smart. But that's the exact opposite of what I'm about to tell you. I'm going to make this as simple as 1 plus 1 equals 2. The first one that we're going to talk about is your ulnar nerve. So first, I want to just go over where this is actually at within your body. So it doesn't show it in the diagram, but it's going to originate out of your neck, run through the shoulder, down the forearm, through the elbow, and then into your hand. So most of the time when people are having ulnar nerve symptoms, they're going to be here at the elbow. But what most people don't understand is that the problem is coming from somewhere else. The compression is caused at the elbow, which is why the symptoms are present there. So with where this nerve runs throughout this entire scope of from your neck to your shoulder all the way down your arm, is there's a bunch of different places that it could be compressed or impinged or whatever word you want to call it, is there's tension being placed on that nerve to the point where as you move, something pinches on the top of it and now you get a pain symptom. So for me, I had 3 surgeries on my ulnar nerve, all at my elbow. 6 years later, after that first surgery, I was still dealing with symptoms. And this is something that a lot of guys experience as well, is they have a transposition, the pain goes away because the compression's gone, but we didn't address the root cause for why that compression is there in the first place. We essentially just released the pressure valve, but didn't change the reason for why the pressure was building up in the first place. So as you go to PT to rehab this, whether you've had surgery or you haven't, is you're going to do shoulder strengthening exercises because they're going to say that your scap is weak or your shoulders is in a bad position, and it absolutely is in a bad position. But just solely attacking the shoulder with this isn't going to change the shoulder position or the compression that's going on there. It might alleviate it for a little bit amount of a time, but it's not going to change the actual reason for what's going on there. So as you're doing this, I want to show you kind of the misalignments that are going on here and why that would be happening. So if you're looking at it from the side, we would want the elbow to be underneath the shoulder and the shoulder to be pulled back within the socket. But what happens with us is we go into thoracic flexion from our upper back rounding, and then the shoulder is going to internally rotate or pull across, or it's going to hinge behind. So all of that is going to change how the shoulder actually fits within the socket. So rather than sitting here and being able to move freely, is it tips forward and rotates in. So it doesn't have that same freedom of space to move fluidly throughout the delivery. So as you're going into this, particularly on the release, is it lacks the space to move forward more within the socket as we're getting into extension. That causes this to jam up and then the symptoms go down. So if we can get the shoulder to a more neutral position where it's in a functionally better spot for you to be able to move, then all of a sudden that compression that's coming from the bone being improperly placed isn't there. And now the symptom's gone with it because we're addressing the root cause of what is causing the symptom. It's not a weakness, it's a position issue. So I want to show you somebody that I worked with who I helped avoid ulnar nerve surgery and kind of what's going on and why those misalignments would be there. So this is Evan Valencia. And like I just said, he was trying to avoid an ulnar nerve surgery and did successfully. But when you look at his right shoulder, it is in the exact position that I was just talking about, where it's rolled forward. It's not kicked back as much as you see in other guys, but everybody presents a little bit differently. But we're in this very rounded position out of the upper back. The shoulder is rolling forward, and this hand facing back towards the camera is confirming that internal rotation. So it rotates the bone within the socket, which causes the hand to face back rather than out towards the inside of your hip. So because he's in this position, as he's trying to throw, the shoulder lacks the space that it needs to freely move. It compresses the nerve and the symptom shows up. But by us getting his shoulder into a better position and returning it to the more neutral spot that I was talking about, the symptoms went away and he was able to play his entire season without ulnar nerve pain and not need an ulnar nerve transposition. Next one we're talking about is Tommy John. And one of the biggest misconceptions with Tommy John is that you tear your UCL from throwing too many breaking balls. The pitch you are most likely to tear your UCL on is actually a fastball. And the reason for that is you're putting more force and going full effort into that pitch. So as of 2023, 37% of MLB pitchers had undergone Tommy John at one point in their career. The reason your UCL ruptures is because of something called valgus load, or essentially this layback position. So as the arm is coming back here, is it stresses the inner part of that ligament. And then as we're following through, all of that tension has to go somewhere. And if you aren't properly stabilizing or in the best position, that stress can go straight into your UCL. So when we're looking at the UCL, it's going to connect the bottom inner part of your elbow to the inner part of your humerus. So it's meant to support these bones being in a stable position. But when this tears, there's a couple of different ways that it can tear. That's not the point. But when this does tear, obviously it's going to take the stability out of the elbow as a whole. So there's some guys that can throw through a partial tear because there's still enough intact to be able to stabilize. But other guys, like if we get to a certain point, it's like we've got to have TJ because of that. But simply having Tommy John does not change the reason for why the stress was going there in the first place. So again, most of the time when you go through Tommy John rehabs, there's going to be a bunch of shoulder strengthening work. If you had a hamstring graft instead of the palmaris graft, you might have some leg work incorporated with that, but that's not everybody. The reason Tommy John surgeries and rehabs are unsuccessful is because they don't address the root cause for what is going on. It is going in and fixing the area that is already damaged, but it's not changing the reason for why the damage occurred in that place in the first point. So because of that, and the increased rate and like guys are throwing harder than they ever have before, but we're doing this on a very misaligned structure where we're not getting into good positions. So most commonly what's going to happen is, particularly with the front side, is most people's front sides are going to rip open too early. That's going to cause this arm to drag behind you as it's going into that valgus stress, which is what's placing the stress there. The other common thing is as you're coming through is the elbow dips below the shoulder, regardless of what plane you're on. The elbow drops because of some mechanical inefficiency. But the reason the inefficiency is there isn't that you have bad mechanics or a bad pitching coach. It's because your body isn't able to recruit the muscles in the proper sequence to make that movement happen efficiently. It's going to find some way to make the movement happen. So I like to think of those as compensations or cheats. So because something can't do its job, something else comes in to help it. Well, now this can't do its job, so something has to help that. And it's this chain reaction of dominoes. But it happens from the ground up because baseball and almost all the sports that you play are a ground up force transfer. So if your ankle or your knee or your hip isn't stabilizing or working appropriately, something else is going to pay the price for that. And in this case, it's your UCL. So if we aren't addressing the inefficiencies of the problems that are going on at the ankle, the knee, and the hip that are leading to the problem that's happening higher up, then another Tommy John or another injury is likely going to occur because we aren't addressing the root cause of why that stress is going there in the first place. I want to show you an athlete that I was working with that was coming off of TJ, and he was cleared by his physical therapist at this point, had not quite started throwing yet, but was close to it. So when we look at his upper back and his shoulders, he's in a very similar position to what we just saw with Evan, right? We have that thoracic rounding forward. We have the internal rotation happening at the shoulder. But if you look at all of the lower body things as well, is his legs are very valgus. And what I mean by that is knock-kneed. So when we're looking here, the ankle is going to be outside of the knee in this position. We would want that stacked right under. We've got a hip elevation on this right side. So there's some inefficiencies throughout the lower half that are contributing to the problems occurring in the upper half at the elbow. But by getting Ethan's body into a better position, he's now able to throw pain-free and is actually throwing harder than what he was pre-TJ. When it comes to Tommy John, everybody wants to blame the one throw that actually led to you feeling the blowout. But it wasn't the one throw. It was the thousand or tens of thousands of throws that you made before it that put micro stress into that area, ultimately to where that micro stress added up and now it failed and now we need surgery. Last but not least, we're talking about pronator strains. And this isn't something that I've personally experienced, but it's something that my brother has dealt with throughout college and his professional career. So when we're looking at the pronator and where it attaches and inserts, is it's going to attach on the outside of this bone that goes down to your thumb, and then it's going to attach to the inner part of the humerus. So all three of these injuries that we're talking about are inner elbow related issues. So the big thing that happens here is this muscle is designed to create pronation or flip your palm down from a palm up position. So when the shoulder internally rotates, like we've been talking about with all of these throwers, right? Is not only does it change where that bone is positioned at the shoulder from it pulling in, it rotates it within the socket, which causes it to rotate at the elbow. And then your forearm bones respond to that as well, which is again like why that palm goes back towards the camera. But because this is coming in, this responds as well. So now that muscle is in a different placement or different origin, or not different origin, but it has a different line of action. So this muscle is meant to pull in a certain direction. But if we change the alignment of the bone, it now can't pull in the direction that it's meant to. So it takes on more stress because of that. So when we're looking at Ian's pictures, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about with that, and the shoulder rolling forward in the upper back position that we're talking about with all of these guys in similar spots, but dealing with different injuries. Is this shoulder right here? Is you don't see any of his pec attachment in the front of his shoulder, but you see a lot of the back of the shoulder exposed behind it. That's going to cause this to rotate in just like I'm talking about. And now we're in this position as opposed to a more neutral position. So for him, it's just where the stress goes. For other people, that stress goes to the nerve, or it goes to the UCL, or it goes to the bicep. Is there's a bunch of different areas or injuries that we could be talking about, but almost all throwers are going to present with some level of this misalignment, just based off of similar training methods across the sport, repeated movement patterns, and how much we sit and we're rounded forward in a day-to-day life. Is that muscle isn't able to work in the way that it's designed to. So the stress is placed there. And now it's one of these injuries that can take a long time to heal because it's attaching to the inner part of your elbow. If that isn't working as well as it should be able to, more stress can go into the UCL as a result of it. So there's other injuries that can happen on the back end of this of trying to play through it. So I know that was a ton of information, but to make this into a very simple 1+1=2 equation, it's as simple as this. Elbow injuries are the result of stress being offloaded incorrectly. The reason that stress is offloaded incorrectly is because of your movement patterns. The reason your movement patterns are off is because of your body's alignment and the inability to properly recruit muscles in the correct sequence, which forces you to compensate and then places the stress on your elbow. By getting your body into a better alignment, you'll improve your body's ability to properly recruit these muscles, which will improve your sequence, which will improve where that stress is going so that you can finally throw pain free again. If you want to know more about how posture can help you get back on the field, click the link in the description and book in a call where you'll speak to either me or one of my team members about how posture works and how we can help you. If we can't help you, we'll point you in the right direction of something that we think would work for you best.